everyone, and welcome back to Purple Noon, a podcast. I am Stephanie Conti, and I am here with my bestie, the best podcast partner anyone could have. And are we late to this episode? Yes, but we tried.
We did
twice. We tried.
Yeah.
So the first time, we couldn't even begin the attempt scenario, and then a second attempt where we got 30 minutes through, had to stop, and the audio didn't save. The first attempt, I think it was, or like we were about to, you had developed a really bad migraine, right?
My famous migraines.
Her famous migraines, which look, understandable. I would not want to talk about such, a complex movie with a migraine like that. So all is good there. And then we were like, oh yeah, let's film this. But then of course we forgot where we live. Florida. We decided to record in Central Florida.
At like 3 o'clock.
In the afternoon, evening time, where if you are in Florida right now, you mean the daily hurricane.
Yeah.
Yes. So my lights and everything we had like a little bit of a surge, I think is what you call it. I call it a little outie, where essentially everything just kind of, it was funny because all of a sudden I was like, oh, my light flickered. And then I realized, I'm like, no, everything flickered. Because the thing is, my computer was still on. So I was like, okay, power didn't go out. Great. But then when I realized it was a power flicker rather than just the light that I'm using, the Wi-Fi was out. And when, it was thundering and it was crazy outside and stuff like that, when I finally got my Wi-Fi back on and I checked for the audio, she wasn't there. So this is our second official attempt. So our second actual recording, third attempt at making this episode. Guys, even though it's a little bit late, hey, we're trying. We're trying, okay? We're putting in the effort. So before we talk about that and stuff, there's been a little bit of movie drama, like some actual real life bonchinche. It's been circulating for a few months now, but I really feel like we're hitting it right on the nail. And that is the Don't Worry, Darling fiasco and everything of what's going on. So what have you seen on the interwebs about all this stuff, Savannah? Because I've seen a lot. Too much, in fact.
The first thing I saw, the first piece of rumor, like the first big thing to come out of this movie, was the Olivia Wilde and Harry Styles affair. That was the first thing I ever heard that came from this movie. And then there was the Shia LaBeouf stuff. There was the Florence Pugh stuff. And now it's just spiraled into the fact that everybody on this cast hates each other. And I don't know if you saw, they were like, I think it was Venice. That was
Venice
like the
Film
most
Festival.
Awkward reunion.
God,
ever.
Every single press conference wasn't normal. And every one of them, even though going the red carpet, every day that they have been there has just started and fueled more questions and more like, what the hell is actually going on here?
The fact that nobody will also answer anything, it just kind of tells me that like majority of the stuff must have some truth in it, because otherwise, or this could just be like a huge publicity stunt, but this seems like way too.
It just seems a little too much of a train wreck to be a publicity stunt. Like I could understand but they were Shia, and all that type of stuff, right? But then when you see the goofiness, and I'm a Harry Styles fan, but there's a lot of questions.
There's a lot of goofy behavior going on
that I have about this man now. And that is, I understand, like, he's not an actor, okay? Or let's say this is his first big acting role besides Dunkirk, where he had like 4 lines.
That's
and
true.
Then I think died. How do you work on a movie and then you have publicists up the wazoo? You're one of the most famous celebrities on the planet right now, right? You have one of the most popular songs right now on the radio. Everyone knows who you are, right? Everyone knows who you are. How do you fumble interviews left and right like that. And it's not even like, oh, he was acting a certain way. Just like, Savanna, if I ask you, how was it like acting? The worst response you could say is to give me a very California response, which is like, well, it was just like a movie, bro.
Like,
And that's what he did. Did you not see that interview?
I did. And my conclusion is that this movie must not be good. And I think they might be realizing it now that this movie is not good. And I'm hoping it surprises me because I did like the concept of it. Not that I'm an Olivia Wilde fan, but I do like the concept of like the Stepford Wives vibes.
Yeah.
But the reviews came in and they are not good. They are not good.
No, they're not good. And I love how Venice Film Festival's they're trying to save it where it's like, oh yeah, we got a 3-minute standing ovation. Bro, people are trying to leave. People are trying to leave.
But I feel like that response is sort of like a cop-out. Like, oh, I was just, I don't know. Because I think if he says...
you could be showing Last Tango in Paris up on that screen, and it could be my first time ever seeing it, right? I'm not standing 6 minutes for an ovation. Yeah. Like, I don't get how they're like, oh yeah, I got an 11-minute, ovation. That's because 11 minutes people stood around trying to get to the exit, and the only thing that was available to them was do the little white people clap that they do on airplanes.
Dude, but no, I feel like that comment was a cop out because I feel like if he says like I worked so hard and I did what I did, whatever, I feel like maybe he thought it would be embarrassing if the movie is bad.
Yeah, and I think also I think you kind of expect that type of behavior from someone who is more of like a nepotism baby, not a, the most super famous pop star right now that there is, who has all the access to all these resources and still, the wigs look great. I just
thought it was weird because
the publicity training.
He also has another movie coming out in November. So what are you doing? What is the question going to be different or the answer going to be different in November?
I'm getting concerned because I genuinely think his performance on iCarly is going to be better than this performance here. And who looks at that clip and goes, yeah, that clip of Harry Styles doing 4 different accents in 1 minute? Upload it. That's it's like that one audio where it's like, the hoe's gonna love this. We don't, because it's not good acting at all.
In that retrospect, like in that, now, okay, this is not me defending Shia LaBeouf.
It wasn't even bad acting. It's just like, there really wasn't a director on set then to go, hey, let's get you a vocal coach, my guy.
I feel like, and it really is, if this movie is such a mess, this movie is such a mess because of her. That's it. That's all I'm going to say about that. Because at the end of the day, when you have a movie that has Shia LaBeouf kicked out and you are still the most problematic person in this film, that is such a big problem.
That really is.
I don't know why people don't like Shia LaBeouf is airing out his dirty laundry pretty much like I don't know, what did he do?
This man legally can't enter in a Walgreens. Olivia Wilde still was able
and to videos and like prove that she's lying, and the fact that like Shia LaBeouf is doing this is just bad. It's downhill.
He got even Stevens on her
for real. Like
it's crazy. It's so crazy. And you know what it is? You know what I also don't like? This is, in reality, this is all like, it should be all fun and games and haha, this is so dumb and stupid and everything like that. It's such a train wreck and all these things. But sadly, there are, like, especially in the way that and I didn't even think about this until my dad mentioned this. And he was like, wow, this is a fat L for female directors.
It is, yeah.
Because the first time a female director is heavily circulating in the news, it's not for a good reason. It's not for making a masterpiece. Yeah. It's not for doing any of this stuff. And I was like, he's right. Like, he's genuinely right. Like, the fact that, and look, there's been female directors long since the day, like we've had female directors for years, but in terms of, and especially in mainstream American media, slim pickings. It's like 3% of maybe all the directors out there. You know, if you ask a person, any film bro, hey, who's your favorite female director besides Sofia Coppola? They're going to
Yeah.
go, and I don't blame them because there's not a lot out there. There's not a lot out there.
And I think it's sad because, like, at the end of the day, I don't know about the film, but the idea had potential to reach a lot of people. Most people probably would have saw this movie because it does look interesting. The trailer
it has
looked
the
really
all-star
good.
cast. They put a lot of money into it.
But
It would have
now
been
this is
cool
just
to
going to be
see.
known as the dramatic, like, this movie's, you're not going to remember this movie. You're going to remember all the problems it had before. And that's the issue. You're not going to remember Olivia Wilde. You're going to remember the problematic person she is. And I think the worst of it all is a lot of these actors, Florence Pugh, Chris Pine, there's
Poor Chris
another woman in
Pine.
it.
Poor Chris
But
Pine.
there are other people in it that are professionals. Like, these are not, sorry, it's not Nick Kroll. Not that he's not a professional, but renowned actors that have been in serious roles. Nick Kroll's great, by the way. I love him. But I'm just saying, they have built this reputation of being serious and professional.
Yeah.
And I feel like all this has done is just kind of drag them into, like, pettiness, like social media pettiness. And that's the real issue here. Like, you're not, I'm not going to say you're hurting people's careers, but, like, you're putting people in position that they shouldn't have been to begin with. Nobody signed up to do all this. They did it.
Yeah. And I think it's also because you have, like you said, like you have people like Florence Pugh and Chris Pine who they're professionals for a reason. They always do their best and they do a great job. And that's why people are still hailing Florence Pugh in this movie, despite what seems to be a train wreck that it is. But it really, really, it sucks when you have not just one person, but multiple people just bringing down all, like, any goodness that Florence Pugh, Chris Pine, Gemma Chen, Nick Kroll, all of them do in this film is already knocked down 2 notches by the behavior of Olivia Wilde, primarily. And you could say also to Shia LaBeouf, but Shia LaBeouf is no longer in this movie. So whatever we see on screen is not going to be due to Shia or anything. This is all on Olivia and her direction. And it's funny too, because she made a comment on a like late night show host. I think it was about a year or 2 ago when she first directed Booksmart, right? And she pretty much says, like, if a movie is crap, it's because the director was crap.
Well, she better stand by that, because,
like, seriously. But Olivia Wilde is also someone where I genuinely don't think I should have even been behind the camera in the first place. Like, genuinely, and this is not like me being, oh, I'm a woman hater. This is not it. It's me, like, she tried Booksmart, and even Booksmart was still not as successful as what it's thundering again.
Oh my gosh.
We're sticking through, okay?
We'll see what happens.
Yes. But it's just one of those things where, yeah, like, she did direct Booksmart and everything like that. You gotta try a little something, more before.
Yeah, this was very big. You have a good point. This was a very big movie to come out with right after Booksmart.
100%. And I'm looking at her biography and everything and what she's directed and stuff. Bro, she directed the Red Hot Chili Peppers' Dark Necessities music video? What?
Very cool.
That's pretty cool. I will say that's pretty cool. That's also my favorite Red Hot Chili Peppers song. But she went from Booksmart, which is a very indie film.
Lighthearted, fun.
Very lighthearted comedy to now Don't Worry, Darling. I think there should have been a few more, even to like go from Dark Necessities to Booksmart. I think there should have been a little bit more something else too.
Now, like just to clarify, I don't think this is, like, she's not the devil. I'm not trying to vilify this woman, but the level of, at the end of the day, like, we can, from this situation, she's not a professional. She is not a professional director, nor does she seem to want to be. I just don't see how does your movie get this bad? How do you let all this drama pretty much put a notch down on your movie? People are not going to remember Don't Worry Darling. They're going to remember the mess like she made.
Yeah.
And that's the I don't know how you fumble so much. That is my issue with her. How do you fumble what essentially could be your big break as a director?
Yeah, and it's just one of those things too where I do think you need to have some type of training in order to be, and I'm not saying like you're going to go to film school for 4 years and get into $120,000 debt. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that I think you need to train. And I don't think she has that training. And you can also tell by Booksmart, because Booksmart is very much a well-written comedy with extremely basic directing.
Sure. Yeah.
And I genuinely think it's one of those things too, where if you look at what the other leads of Booksmart have done, this just was a perfect role for them. And I think that also makes it way easier to direct.
Yeah.
Like, because if you compare Booksmart to the two main leads to other characters that they play, that's their typecast.
Yeah, that's true. It's
true. Over and over and over again. You know, these are also actresses. Like, one of them has been on a TV show for like the past 7 years. The other has, she has access to so many different acting coaches and stuff, and her brother is a fantastic actor. It's not going to be that hard to do something like this, because you're not bringing people out of their comfort zone.
That's true. Very true. Good point.
So, and people could say like, well, she was dating, married? I don't even know. To Jason Sudeikis. I know they were in a relationship for a while, but I still don't think that's going to be enough for you to try to single-handedly direct a multi-million-dollar production.
No.
So, and it's, the timeline also just really doesn't look good at all.
No, it doesn't. Like, everything looks bad.
Her, and especially with, her ex-husband and Harry and stuff like that, to now them not even standing next to each other at the premiere.
Whole thing is just bad. At least, like, it's just, it looks... Look, I heard a lot of things about, look, if it was a man, whoever it was, it just looks bad. Man or woman, this situation looks horrific. And everything is pretty much butchered now. When you go into this film, like I said, you're thinking about that awkward press conference. You're thinking about the fact that, like,
Harry Styles it could potentially be switching out of different accents.
And, like, the fact that, like, Florence wouldn't even look at their direction. It's just, you can tell everybody genuinely is having a bad time now. Like, this is a very stressful time, when really you're supposed to be like, this is the time where you celebrate your movie, and everybody looks stressed.
Yeah.
So it looks bad. Everything looks bad. But I'll tell you what I'm happy about.
What are you happy about?
Brendan Fraser getting that ovation.
I am excited to see that movie. That's a Darren Aronofsky film. I know it's going to gut me. I haven't seen anything from him for a while, so, and I think it has a really, it's definitely reminds me of like a What's Eating Gilbert Grape, but maybe a more modern version just based on the plot alone. So I'm excited to see that. I'm really excited to see that.
Brendan Fraser deserves it.
The fact that he was crying during it warms my heart. He seems like a very, very nice person.
Yeah, I agree. He seems like, I think he's just one of those people that like genuinely have been through a lot in the industry, and I'm really happy everybody seems to be treating him the way he should have been treated. Yeah.
By the way, I think it's really funny because I just read an article about Olivia Wilde and her making, some stuff. And the article starts off with saying Olivia Wilde went to film school on the set of other directors' films.
What does that mean?
Like just working on other films.
Okay.
That was her film school. Here's the thing. You can work for like some of the most amazing people on a film set. If you don't know how to communicate, you can't really be a director.
I see.
Like genuine, like here's the thing. You might have a vision, but directors, they typically don't touch cameras. It's not like they're moving people around. It's not like you have to be able to communicate and everything. So people, and that's why a lot of actors turn directors. That's where they're lacking, because they don't know how to communicate. Like, they may have the right idea and stuff like that, but they just don't know how to communicate to their crew, their actors, and all the other people involved on what exactly is their vision, you know? And genuinely, as someone who's worked on different sets, different professional sets with some pretty high stakes people and everything, I still don't feel like I know everything about directing, and I never will. And I never will. So if you just think, oh yeah, working on a set, I'll know everything. It gave me a confidence I needed for sure, because I was like, yeah, I can do it. But it definitely made me more aware, because it's not just communicating with your actors. You might have a crew of 100 people. You have to be able to communicate with all of them, not be rude, mean, asinine, or anything, unless it's 100% warranted for whatever reason, you know? Like, I don't know. I really just wish we stuck with either like indie directors who slowly work on projects and then make their way into the big leagues, or just go with people who have been trained, frankly. You know? And I say that because I know the indie route is going to be harder for people. And I know that also going to school and going into a lot of debt without, any surefire way of knowing if you're going to become a director or not. I understand that those are big things to take, but I do think it's those are how either the best type of directors are made.
Yeah.
Molded through a school, or indie and then rising up to the big picture.
I can see that.
Nepotism directing and a lot of actors turning into directors, I'm not the biggest fan of it, because I feel like there's always something missing, and it's usually because they don't learn how to communicate.
The quality isn't there usually. That's the issue. You can definitely tell the difference.
For sure. And I think, look, you could, like, obviously someone like Clint Eastwood, who's been in the game for like 60 years, that's enough time. That's enough time to learn and to direct and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, that's...
And I understand that, and there have been some successful cases and everything, but I don't know.
I understand what you're saying. It's rare.
I'm not
it's
being
a rare
wowed
feat
by directors these days. I'm really not, you know?
I haven't seen a movie this year that, like, wowed me. In fact, I haven't seen a movie in a very long time that I sat and had a real experience. I've seen good movies this year. A lot of good movies,
like Everything Everywhere All at Once was fantastic. All these things, and they're technically amazing too. But
there's nothing that my jaw just dropped.
And I know too that Everything Everywhere All at Once is going to resonate with people, especially those within the culture of, and share similarities within that culture and have that mother-daughter type of dynamicism going on. I know that people will be able to connect to that, but it's been a while since I've truly connected, and I think that's also due. I really like the way old movies look. Put it on a tripod.
There's something about it.
I really I have a love for older movies. I like slower, drawn out movies where I get to just soak up all the details, like bread when you're mopping up sauce. That's the only Italian type of example I can think of. But it's difficult. It's difficult finding movies today that are like that.
No, yeah, I think most of the things that are coming out in theaters are very safe bets. Very much so. Like crowd pleasers. So
I literally think the only thing to have wowed me recently is, and I've talked about it last time, and I will continue to talk about it, in terms of story-wise, Silent Hill 2. That's the only thing. But that's also
not
something
recent.
Old.
That's 20 years ago.
20 years old, yeah. But
that's what I'm saying.
It's like a newer discovery, if you will. But like that's something that I'm like, wow, like that is It's great,
It's taken over your life.
Yes, but it's because it's the one thing I found in years to give me that type of reaction. Even The Woman Next Door, as much as I love that movie, it doesn't hold as much of a visceral reaction I have to like a plot like Silent Hill 2. And I think, obviously I say that because I would love to one day make something as good as Silent Hill 2 in terms of like a plot and a storyline and everything, and how complex and deep rooted the story is and whatnot. But you don't. I like movies with a lot of layers, and I feel like I'm not getting that.
Yeah. I think we don't get enough time to learn about our characters in movies anymore. I
No.
think we kind of are expected to get what we get. So there's not a lot of emotion when it comes to watching movies anymore. And I think that's almost the main part
I
of when you're
like
watching
being
films.
given. I really don't care about being stimulated visually. I like having time to form connections
Yeah.
with either places in movies, things in movies, or people in movies. So the film that we're going to talk about today, I felt that connection, not on a like huge, massive, wide scale Last Tango in Paris for me, or,
No, but
like
there was
Goodfellas for you
something.
type of feel, but definitely like I watched this movie and I was like, this is why older movies will always reign in some way, shape, or form superior, because I'm able to form those connections. I'm able to take in the appreciation for direction,
Yeah. Hmm.
So today we're going to be reviewing a French film titled Two Men in Town. It is about a former bank robber who is released after 10 years in prison. He gets help from a social worker, but as he is living his life as a free man, he gets harassed by an old cop from his past, the cop who had put him in jail 10 years ago prior. So this is by a director named Jose Giovanni. It is also written by him, and it stars Alain Delon as Gino Strablighi, Jean Gabin Jean Gabin as Germaine Cazeneuve. And in terms of other prominent actors, we have Mimsy Farmer, Victor Lenoir, and Cecil Vassorte. And also a little bonus to our boy Gerard Depardieu. Well, he's not our boy, but you know what I mean. Gerard Depardieu, who has like a
A quick little
nice little
cameo.
15-minute early in his career cameo.
Yeah.
So, Savannah, I already know how you feel about this film because we attempted to record this podcast once. But for those who haven't heard the failed attempt, please tell me what you thought about Two Men in Town.
To get the ball rolling, one of the problems I always had with movies that talk about social issues, and this movie talks about a big social issue, is that I feel like there isn't enough balance between story and message. And it's always been one of those things for me where I've kind of not stayed away, but I've kept my expectations very low for
Mm-hmm.
movies that are talking about social problems. In fact, I saw a movie recently called Vengeance, written by BJ Novak, the guy from The Office. And I thought the message of what he was trying to say was very good, but the plot suffered. With this movie, I didn't feel like that at all. It's probably one of the only films I think to do it perfectly,
Mm-hmm.
to make us love this character and understand this character while also talking about like real issues like prison reform and what happens to these people when they leave the prison. So I'm just to start the conversation, I was very impressed on how they were able to make a really good story, make good characters, have excellent acting, but also, you know, really drive the point home on what the movie was actually trying to express, in terms of its message.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
I think because this movie does not get a lot of hype
no.
anywhere, right? In terms of, especially when you talk about Alain Delon and his film history, right?
Mm-mm.
Two Men in Town doesn't come up on anyone's list often, right? So usually you hear about Le Samurai, Purple Noon, you hear about Le Secret Rouge, you hear about all these different things, right? Two Men in Town was something I had stumbled upon because when I looked up Alain Delon one day, like I think 2 years ago, this has been on our list for a while,
Yeah,
right?
it's been on our list for a while.
2 years ago, I looked up and it was one of the only ones to pop up. And it looked like it had a really good quality to it. It was available to buy and stuff like that. So I had added it to the list. I was not expecting to find my newest favorite Delon performance. And I was truly for a movie that really hasn't been talked about and still has such an amazing relevancy today. I mean, it's the context of its relevancy is sad in nature,
Of
but
course.
I say it's amazing because it really is a timeless concept that feels like we've been struggling all around the world, many different places at many different times. And it's really a solid movie. Like, it is a solid film.
Yeah.
So let's start talking about the plot and everything, right? So you
Yeah.
have this Alain Delon's character who was the lead in a bank robbery 10 years prior. He serves his time. A social worker helps him get out because he's on good behavior and everything. He's able to connect with his wife again. And it's really sweet because every day she would stand outside the prison and play music for him. And
Yeah, he had a real
already
one.
that kind of set the tone for the type of person Delone was, because they were saying like, oh, you don't want to move around. He's like, and I think it was, even though that he did this bank robbery and stuff like that, she still knew he was a good person.
Yeah.
As far as the crime goes, no one died, no one was murdered. It was just a bank robbery, right?
Yeah, he wasn't crazy.
He wasn't crazy. He was a non-violent offender. So she has the music out there for him. Even the social worker forms a relationship with her. And when he's finally out of prison, he kind of forms this really beautiful father-son relationship with Alain Delon and Gabine. And I will say, whoever decided to pair these two together knew what they were doing and what needed to be done.
Yeah.
And not only because I genuinely don't know a lot of older actors, French actors from that time who could have possibly done this role. Maybe at this time they could have thrown in like a Burt Lancaster or another type of big prominent actor who kind of had more of like a international fame, but they went with a more well-respected French actor who was still big at the time, but he was kind of aged and he hadn't done a lot of films and stuff. And the chemistry between Gabine and Delon is out of this world.
Yeah.
It's so fantastic. What did you think of that relationship between the two? Do you think someone else could have done the job as them, or do you think it was overall just a perfect match, or somewhere in the middle?
Well, one of the things I noticed very quickly is that they had similar acting styles, at least for the movie. They're both very subtle actors, and they use kind of their eyes to convey all their emotion. And I think that worked extremely well because they played off each other's strengths. So I don't know that they could have picked a more perfect like partner
Mm-hmm.
for each other because they really played. I mean, there are scenes where they're just staring at each other and you can feel the emotion, you can feel the tension. They're not even like making several facial expressions. They're not talking. They're just staring at each other. And it is so emotional. So they found two actors that really play off each other's strengths. So I don't think they could have. I think it would have been very rare. So I do think in this case it was perfect.
Yeah, and I think, and I was talking about this in the failed recording, but with French films, especially French films from this decade, you typically, when you come across acting and stuff like that, like if you compare Italian films to French films from this time frame, the Italians were over the top,
Yeah, you're right.
dramatic, louder than life. Okay.
Crying every 5 minutes.
Crying and oh my god, Mama Roma, which we'll be talking about within the next few weeks. Things like that, right? Whereas the French, they had to be cool. It was new wave. It was the 60s. It was all this. They had to be cool, and I think it was really interesting to see Delone, in my eyes, finally play a multifaceted character.
Yeah.
Where, yeah, in the beginning and when everything is going all right, it's that very chill, very, like straight edge type of persona. But as things progress, that persona for Delone kind of becomes more emotional, And I really like that because I feel like a lot of movies, they just kind of are like, be stone cold, be
Yeah.
cool. And he does it very well. Don't get me wrong. But I felt like whenever I watch an Alain Delon film, I'm looking at a really great actor who's always put in a narrow acting range.
Mm-hmm.
And it was nice to see that range broaden. It was really, really nice to see that range broaden.
Yeah.
And I loved his performance. And I genuinely think it's my favorite performance of Delone that I've seen so far.
No, I completely agree with you. And I think it was so important to also like write the character the way it was in terms of like him being human. Because I think if they did this, you know, stone cold French way, like whatever way of acting you were talking about, it would have completely changed the tone of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So I think whoever, you know, whoever was in charge of that, whether it was the person who wrote the script, whether it was even Delon, I don't know if maybe he was the one who made the call. It really set the tone for the movie and really portrayed this character in the most humane way,
Mm-hmm.
which is what we needed to see. 100%, especially towards the end of the movie. Because if he was still like, I'm cool, then we're kind of like, oh, okay. So I don't know how to feel.
Yeah.
But no, I agree with you. I think it was nice to see Alain Delon have like multiple emotions.
Yeah. And I do want to preface, so I did end up looking up. So Gabin and Delone did end up working together a few years before for a movie called The Sicilian Clan. So
Ooh.
that is definitely something I want to check out, and I'll probably add to the list
Put it on
right
the
after
list.
this is done,
We'll get
just
to in 2
because
years.
their chemistry, I kind of want to see how it was before, see if it evolved, see if maybe, you know, like, because it's just so great. I think I haven't seen a film like this in a while that so without over emotion was able to connect two vastly similar but vastly different characters, right? And I think it's because, you know, you have one of them who's younger, one of them who's older. That already sets apart a lot of differences in terms of the way that they act and the way that they view things and everything. And even like they're both on like the same side of like this somewhat nihilistic coin,
Yeah.
but still on different ends of it. I really like, and this makes me want to see. So, and I also said too that like Gabin wasn't a big thing. He was huge. Like he was huge. I'm looking it up now because I realized he was also in The Grand Illusion, which if you are a Criterion nerd and you're probably listening to this and you're very well familiar with Gabin's background and everything, you're probably going, no, he might have been the bigger star at the time. I'm sorry. This is my first introduction to Gabin.
Yeah.
But really just solid acting all throughout. And I think honestly, like, once again, I was knowing that I was going to like this movie. I didn't think that this movie was going to floor me, and that flooring started to occur not only as the story evolved and it got really smart. It was just really well written, but when we finally started to crack that nut of cool straight edged alone towards the end, and my god, did it gut me. I was on my little stationary bike while watching the rest of this movie crying. I also had a rash flare up on my face, and my tears burned my rash. So it was
It was a
a mess.
ride.
It
Yeah.
was a mess. It was a ride. No pun intended, because I was on my stationary bike. But it was the end gutted me. The performance, because it felt like for the first time, this, oh my god, he's so cool, I love Alain Delon persona broke. And it was a beautiful breaking, but it broke me too. And I wonder, do you feel the same way? Because I feel like we've seen Alain Delon in this one light, and to finally see him break down and be his most human that he's ever been
It was
emotionally ruined me.
It was so sad. It was just so sad because, I mean, we follow the character. Like, he just did such a good job because we just follow this man trying to make a better life for
And we liked
himself.
him. And we liked him, you know, he was a good character too. He was complex. He had some moments of douchery. He had some moments of just awesomeness and just being overall like a really interesting character. And to it to come to that type of end, just crying on the
Well,
stationary bike.
I think the smartest thing they did, and again, this is something I have not seen, was make this character almost at no fault throughout the entire movie. He's just pretty much paying for the mistakes of his past. And There's nothing, oh, well, maybe if he hadn't done that in the movie, or if he didn't talk to this person, there's nothing this man didn't do.
Yeah.
So I think that's important, because when we're talking about prison reform, and if you watch TV shows and movies, when we're seeing prisoners get out of prison, a lot of the plot is, oh, they even if at no fault of their own, they go back to their old ways. And that happens a lot. And that's
Yeah.
important on its own. But what this movie does, it says, like, no, even when he has hard times, even when he does do the right thing, even when he doesn't talk to his old gang members, even when he works hard, he still loses.
Yeah, that even when he's trying his best, he still loses because people are looking at him and going, well, you're in a broken system. How could you not lose? Even when he's doing and resisting every temptation, or nearly every temptation, right?
Yes.
And then it coming to the close of just kind of realizing that there's nothing literally else he could have done.
No.
There's nothing else he could have done. And even, like, I will say, like, even the ending and the outcome, I still feel like isn't a reflection of him, you know? And that's when when you see an act of crime and you're able to still go deep down and go, no, but this character, I don't think it was ill-intentioned. I don't think it was this. That's when you know you've written a really well-written, complex character. When now I'm trying to humanize and relate and even defend this character.
But
It's
I think
genius
that's what
writing.
you were talking about. Exactly what you were saying before, is that we spent time with this character.
Yeah.
We saw him develop. We see, like, everybody around this character also loves him, by the way. Like, all of his friends, his wife, like, everybody loved this guy.
But he does very cleverly. They kind of make he makes some small nuanced enemies that you don't think. And when I say enemies, I mean, like, his wife dies and he plays the music too loud, and they go to storm his door and they're like, you're a bum, you're playing the music loud, you're a bum. And he slaps one dude around, no one else sees. And yet, just something like that, right? Something, a grieving man that we can relate to in some way smacks around someone, and it ends up being used against him in, like, one of the worst ways possible. You have also a lot of that too.
Yeah, but
which it's hard to do. It's hard to put scenes like that in a movie. And keep in mind, I knew the outcome of this movie watching it because I had watched the trailer. And so they kind of have a spoiler in the trailer. So I was still even shocked at how they took all these little, scenes that I thought were just little kind of funny story progressors and use it against our main character in the end.
But this is what you were saying, like, when you take this ride with the character, when movies give you a chance to, like, get to know your character, you overlook those things.
Yeah.
Because you're like, nah, that guy's nice. I saw him riding a bike and he's been, you know what I mean? And I think what you're saying is so spot on. And it's a real big reflection of this film.
Yeah.
We can overlook the fact that this guy was robbing banks and, he hit a few people and he ends up, spoiler alert, he ends up accidentally killing the cop that was after him after being harassed and bullied. And
it's even crazy that I'm sitting here and I'm still thinking, I get it. I get it.
No,
this cop was insane mentally, and everyone saw that.
Power trip. No, this guy was bullying, harassing this guy's family, harassing his wife.
And the writing for that commissioner too was also really done, because you can see the minute he locked eyes, like, this character is not introduced until midway through the film and finally ends up, like, I thought for some reason Gabin was going to kind of be the person to put Delone back, behind bars and things like that, and into any other type of circumstance. But this pivotal villain is only introduced maybe within, the last 45 minutes of the film.
He's not even in it that long.
And the power, like, props to that actor too, but the power that this character had and how we were able to see just the madness that took over him as he wanted to pin and get that victory of putting away Delone again. And whether it was following Delone as, he had those, his prior robbery friends coming up to him and even remembering the jacket. And then when the commissioner locked up Delone, took his house keys, went to his home, I went, oh my God. Because you don't think, like, I didn't think that far. I thought that the cop was just going to be like slapping him around and kind of be lazy, and just be like, I know you're up to no good. But the fact that we could see this cop going so far, wanting that victory again, to break and enter into his home, even though he had keys, break and enter, remember that jacket, pick the number, even to the point where, remember, in the end, one of the robbers ends up in the hospital because he shoots him. And while this dude is practically dying, we don't even know if he really survives in the end or not. He is harassing, not about the robbery that he was just arrested and shot for, but on any connection that he had to Delone, which is kind of insane. It really shows his priorities as winning a victory over than doing actual justice.
No, and like we're able to see that like very quickly. I mean, I saw it that like Elaine's character had like no chance.
Yeah.
I saw it when this guy started coming around his job. I was like, oh, there's no way. There's nothing he can do now. There's nothing because, and I think that just shows the corruption there. Like, he was powerless. This guy, he's still, even though he rebuilt his life pretty well, he was still an ex-convict. What's he going to do?
Yeah.
What are you going to go to the police station and be like, this guy's harassing me? They're going to laugh at him. They'll be like, oh, yeah, okay. And after, he murders this guy, I think, yeah, after he murders this guy and he's on trial, it's absolutely insane to see that, like, I forget if it was the judge or whoever was in charge. I don't know how the French government works, but whoever's in charge of the trial was pretty much like, yeah, I don't want to hear about anybody that ever knew this guy. You guys are not allowed to tell me anything. So they didn't even let anybody kind of come to his defense at all, except that one lady who was the defense.
They raved about how, the cop was a father. He was an amazing man. He solved so many cases and stuff. And
bro,
one thing I thought that I just could not believe too was the fact that there was a witness. There was a witness to the murder. And what essentially happened was this commissioner snuck into Delone's house while his girlfriend was there, while Delone was out. Delone walks in, sees this dude kind of feeling up his girlfriend, or at least heading in that direction. So after being stalked, now all of a sudden this commissioner's like, I want your life and I want your girl too. I'd lose it as well.
And so he lost a wife. The guy's wife, the first wife died in the beginning of the movie.
He had lost what seemed to him as everything in the beginning. He slowly regained back his life, and then now to lose it again. And keep in mind, like, most people after going through a car crash where you lose a spouse and stuff like that, that would be enough. Like, I thought it was going to be like, oh, wife's dead. He's going to lose it and he's going to rob because he feels empty. And so he's going to rob. That's what's going to happen, right? No. It shows that still he had a good support system. He was able to overcome all this stuff. And now you had this one cop that wanted to just ruin it. And genuinely, it's one of those things too where when they were doing the trial and everything, right? The fact that she gave her testimony and then they said like, oh, it was considered to be impartial. Meaning it essentially, and I don't know legal terms, but like, essentially it had to be taken with a grain of salt because of her relationship with Delone, which I absolutely think is so beyond messed up. Like the fact that you have a witness there who would have ultimately said like, hey, this commissioner had been stalking me at my job for months, was stalking him for months, walked into my apartment and then started to grope me. And they're like, that's got a lot of judgment. That has a lot of opinions in that. Like, what?
Nobody asked why he was at the house also. Nobody asked what he was doing there.
My
and
thing
it wasn't
too,
like,
the cop that was also like, hey, you're kind of going insane over this. And he was like, I don't care. Where was that dude?
Yeah, no, there was no chance. It was a setup, 100%. There was no chance, no
But
chance for DeLone.
it really, there was no chance for DeLone. And even when everyone who was closest with him, like his worker, that like his boss that he had been working with for years, and the guy just said nothing but amazing things about him. His girlfriend saying nothing but amazing things. The his social worker that he had a relationship with for like years, like like that father son relationship with, the fact that this social worker also let him hang around his children and his wife and bring him into his own home and stuff like that. And still, they found so many ways to demonize DeLone's character.
Yeah.
As a bank robber who got out of the system and now killed a man.
Yeah.
And look, I wasn't expecting, and I already knew kind of where the end was going to go, but I was still hoping. Even though I knew, I was still like, no, maybe he'll get life. Maybe he'll be able to see his girlfriend through the grates and she'll play music for him. Like, even when I knew what was going to happen, I did not want it to happen because I cared so deeply for this character. Now, that ending, I think, what started trickling down the tears and everything was not the fact that everyone tried to get like a presidential pardon and stuff like that, you know. It was when it was time for Elaine, his character, to be hanged, or to be guillotined rather, because the guillotine had not been
French were brutal, let me tell you.
And it's
so guillotining in the 1970s. Oh my gosh!
To the fact that here is the last. Besides his girlfriend, the last person who he had a connection with was forced to see it happen, and him being scared was what got me. That's what really started to get me, because I feel like if you've known what you've done, you did it was wrong and stuff like that, you wouldn't be afraid. You would just kind of accept it, right? Unless you're a narcissist, right? The fact that after everything, he didn't want to say anything and stuff, that now our cool, our cool, suave actor was now borderline a mess, was so intense for me to see, because I'd never seen DeLone's side like that before.
Yeah.
So that one, and he wasn't fully blubbering because he wasn't like going on and rambling.
The look he gave.
The look.
Yes.
And how sad he was and how long but quick the process felt simultaneously. And it just gutted me,
No, yeah, it was a rough ending. It was a rough, but it was very powerful ending.
Very, very, and very well done too. I love the set that they used. I loved how they did it and everything. And I thought it was overall just a really excellent, well done film. As there were some scenes that I noticed that there were some, I will say, directing technical issues, like some things didn't match and stuff like that. But I believe this was a lower budget film.
Right.
And I think this was one of the first things or one of the newer things that that the director had made. So I was still overall really, it was one of his earlier works too. Now, speaking of the director and everything, this movie even hits a personal home to the director himself, because if we go to the trivia of this, essentially, this movie was part of, it says here, this movie was part of a campaign against the death penalty in France that took place in the 70s. The director was once sentenced to death in 1945, right after the war, and was pardoned by the French president. So this is kind of him imagining his life if it wasn't. Now, the whole circumstance and everything isn't correct. Like, this is not what happened to him. But 10 years later, after completing his sentence, he became a writer, screenwriter, and movie director. And 10 years after this movie, the death penalty was abolished in France.
Good. I was having a gripe with the government over there.
So I will say there has been, because I tried looking, because I was wondering, why was this man sentenced to death? So I think there's a lot of conflicting sources and stuff like that. But overall, he was pardoned, right? So yeah, it was a really crazy circumstance. Hold on, I have to look, and I know it had something to do when he was really young, under the influence of his brother during World War II.
Okay.
So let me see. Prison sentence for... Was he a Nazi? Let's see the results.
Well, I hope not. Let's hope it wasn't that.
Oh, so here, according to the filmnoirfoundation.org, well, it's an org, so surely we can trust it, right? Let's see. So it's him talking about it and stuff. Apparently, there's a lot of conflicting information as to what exactly he did. I've seen a lot of conflicting information about it. At 22, he was convicted, along with his older brother, in an extortion and murder plot masterminded by their uncle.
Okay.
So the brother escaped from prison only to be killed in a fight, and Giovanni was sentenced to death.
Oh my gosh.
So because of his father's extensive but discreet help on Giovanni's behalf, the sentence was commuted to life imprisonment, and he was freed after serving 8 years.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So kind of similar in terms of the 8 years and stuff like that, but I am not sure. Like I said, I've heard conflicting information. I've heard that it was mostly a plot led by the brother. Other people say no, it was led by him and he just got really lucky and stuff like that, you know? Like, I've heard many conflicting information about it.
That's absolutely wild.
Yeah, but he also has memoirs where he talks about it and everything. And yeah, like, I think it's great. I think, you know what it kind of reminds me of? It kind of reminds me of that new issue with everyone's talking about with, what was it, where the crawdads sing?
Oh, yeah.
Similar to that in a way. However, just based on the spoilers alone that I read about where the crawdads sang, I think that's a little bit worse.
Oh, what the author did?
Yes. Well, also
Yeah,
the way
I
that
heard
it ends. I don't know. Do you know how it ends?
Oh, I saw it.
Oh, you saw it?
Because
What
I
did
had
you
a
think
friend
of it?
that really. It was decent. It was decent. Spoiler alert: the main girl, she was getting bullied, and like it was a problem. Like, I don't blame the main girl in the story, but she does end up getting away with murder of her ex-boyfriend.
Interesting.
But the boyfriend had it coming. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
But the author, I didn't hear about the accusations till later on, until after I saw the movie. And I was like, yikes. How did this even get greenlit after that?
Oh, so okay. I found here's more conflicting information about Jose Giovanni. He was a member of the French resistance during World War II, then joined a criminal gang in Italy ran by his uncle. He was 22 years old when he and his older brother were arrested for burglarizing a home in Paris. The homeowner died during the commission of the robbery, and the siblings were arrested and sentenced to death. His brother escaped only to be killed, and his father then asked the French government to commute his sentence to life imprisonment, and it worked.
That sounds very similar to the story.
Very similar. Very, very similar. Interesting. But like, my thing is, I just want to know who killed the person? Who killed this old man?
Yeah, what was
in the
going
apartment?
on? Yeah.
That's what I want to know.
Some sketchy business here, huh?
Regardless, I think the film is beautiful and has a great message.
No, I'm happy that, like, first of all, I think this is a great argument against the death sentence. I've personally never been for it, not to get political, but I think this is a very powerful way to show these people as humans that have feelings and emotions. And a lot of, like, the story is a perfect example.
Yeah, I really think this movie is. I too agree with not doing the death penalty. I feel like if you want the death penalty, or like if you're going to give the death penalty to someone, it has to be clear, concise involvement in
No, it's
a
got to be like Richard
mass murder.
Ramirez.
Like immediately, being an American, I think of school shootings. Like I do think, like right now in the state of Florida, the one Cruz, the one kid who, man now, who performed the Stoneman Douglas high school killings and killed like multiple people and had confessed to, multiple manifestos that he did it, he was going to do it and stuff like that. Because he was a minor during the time of the crime, they're now fighting. You can't, in the state of Florida, sentence minors to death.
Right.
So they're trying to do trials where they can try him as an adult as he is now and try him now so that way they can try doing the death penalty on him.
See.
Which honestly, I think it's one of those things where maybe like I don't know. I feel like I don't know enough in terms of how it affects the families, especially when it's something like that.
I think that's a hard situation because I think that involves a lot of people.
Yeah.
Particularly.
I think if all the families are petitioning for the death penalty, they should go through with it. I think it's only fair.
Was this the one? I can't even keep up. Which was this? Was this the one in Palm Beach? Like where the school was, or?
I believe so.
This was the one a few years ago, right?
Yes, this was the one and I think he killed 17 people.
Yeah, I remember. That one was horrific.
Parkland shooting.
Parkland. Oh my God. Parkland. Yeah, that was horrific. But yeah, that's a very different situation than I think.
Well, yeah, because I think when you have multiple cases of murder with manifestos, I do think, because I think more studies need to be conducted and research, because I'm sorry, when someone's done a crime that big, there's no rehabilitation. There's no option for rehabilitation.
Well, like I hope they are studying him like while he's in. I don't know what the process would be, but like we definitely need to be like getting as much information from these people as possible. Whatever they're going to say, whatever you can get, gather.
And also, does keeping someone like him alive, does that create, or sentencing him to death, does this create some type of, because with mass shooters and everything like that, there's always this type of idolization that occurs. Will there be an idolization from him living or from him dying?
But that's hard to say because there have been so many more shootings.
Yes.
So that's another issue is like, can we pin this on one person now? You know what I mean? Like it's a horrific problem we have in this country. And I'm really hoping this ends at some point, that we can get a better handle on things. But I agree with you. Like, I really hope they're researching this person. They're doing something. They're getting something out of him while he's sitting, and I assume he's in prison, obviously.
Oh, and by the way, apparently I just looked this up. As of last year, would you believe that the mass shooter's sister is also facing life in prison?
Really?
Yes.
She's facing about
it? And not for the same crime. So it's what? Technically, so they share the same mother. But it is it looks like she tried to kill an elderly woman.
Oh.
And was like targeting her and like trying to steal her money and things like that. Like lots of evidence,
Oh my God. Jesus. All right.
That's insane. That's crazy. Like, that is truly. And so essentially, I'm also reading through an article too that says like that the mother did do a lot of drugs during all of her pregnancies. And that's why all of her kids have like, obviously their upbringing could have not been that amazing either.
Yeah.
But it's a really tricky circumstance when figuring out like, okay, with the death penalty and everything like that, what is going to be the best case scenario for those who grieve? I genuinely don't think the death penalty should be given unless it's a full-blown like it's gotta be something more than just a fit of rage type of thing. And I'm not saying that's excusable. I'm not saying, yeah, 8 years good behavior, you're out, bro. I'm not saying that. But like some type of ritualistic, sadistic type stuff, I think it could be, even if it's just one person. But I'm also not in law. You know, I really don't know a lot about this stuff and what's going to be the best outcome. But overall, and keep in mind, mass shootings are like 5% of what's happening in America right now, right? So when you consider all the other 95% of crimes and everything that does happen, I don't think death penalty is a fair wage for any of that type of stuff, you know, without substantial proof and confession.
Yeah, I'm mostly not for the death penalty for several reasons. I actually think for really like sadistic, violent people, I think it's kind of too easy.
The
I
death
think
penalty?
yeah, I do think like because what it's not like we guillotine these people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think it's almost an easy punishment.
Yeah, and it's also in a way, you know, I guess it also depends how you view death. It could be an easy way out, you know?
That's what I'm saying.
I think in cases where if people are considering a death penalty, I think it also has to be, instead of just talking it up with a jury and stuff like that, I think you also, to do a death penalty trial, I think you have to have the anyone who is on the side of the victims be able, like especially partners, family members, kids, stuff like that, be able to almost cast a vote as to whether or not should the trial occur.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point.
Because like if even if you're like, no, I just want this person, like, can you imagine you find out, like, let's say, you know, you lose a family member to a mass shooting and stuff, and for 4 years you have to hear about a trial, and then there's a possibility of a sentencing to death trial, life and sentence, you know, a sentence to death trial, right? And you know that's going to take another 2 years, because the reality is it's closer to being 10 years since the Parkland shooting than 5 years.
Yeah, the Parkland shooting was what, 2017?
2016.
Yeah, it's yeah, I
So
can.
it's also one of those things too where I don't think we should be televising any of that stuff. I don't think it's like I genuinely don't see why anyone needs to view news articles, of course, just to keep people in the loop who want to know. I think it's okay to have that public information, but to plaster everywhere, I don't think it does a good job in helping people, and especially the victims. But you know, maybe I might check out this dude's biography. I really like to see what more wisdoms and stuff like that he's gotten from his 8 years in a French prison, and kind of just see how it relates to Two Men into Town and stuff like that. It's very fascinating overall.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
as someone who is majority of the time against the death penalty, I think it's a great movie. I think it's a great movie, and I definitely could see this movie having an impact at people at the time when these decisions about the death penalty were being made.
Yeah, no, this is very powerful, and I think it definitely stands on its 2 feet now. This movie did age very well because we're still having the same issues.
And once again, even without just the issues and everything like that it's involved, still an extremely well-written, well-performed, well-directed film.
Yeah, has it all.
Very, very impressed with this find. So Savannah, what would you rate this film? What would you like to own it on DVD? Well, what are your thoughts? Your closing statements on this film?
I would actually give it a 9.2 out of 10. I really liked it. I thought that the movie was, for an older movie too, I thought it was paced very well.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the dialogue could have been a little bit better for some of the characters. But that's just me kind of like nitpicking. Really, the only thing is, I probably, if I find it at a very good price, I would grab it. But it's not something at the top of my list because I don't see myself watching this really unless I'm showing it to somebody else or we're going to talk about it again.
Yeah.
It's just not a movie. It's just it's a sad movie. It's not something you're going to want to
Oh
watch all
yeah,
the
you're not
time.
like, yeah, I want to cry on the stationary bike again.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So for that reason, it would have to fall in the right place for me to buy it on DVD. But I highly recommend it. I think this is something we should be watching in schools, and I think this is something everybody should watch. So
Oh, for sure. I
yeah,
think this is definitely a, this got to be in like top 1001 movies to watch before you die,
oh
because
yeah,
it just has such great impact, such great writing. I think it's overall a really well done movie. Would I own the film? I do. I bought the film because I knew I was going to like it.
oh that's right. I forgot you have it.
So I was like, yeah, why not? If I'm going to pay $4 to rent it, might as well pay $9 to buy it.
Makes a lot of sense.
So I bought it, and I'm very happy that I bought it because I do think I'd like to go back in and kind of analyze the film a little bit more, not through tear-streamed eyes.
Yeah, you're prepared now.
And I'm more prepared. And there were a lot of other scenes, I think, because there's so many strong points of this movie, there's a lot of other scenes that I think go under. Like, for example, we mentioned Gerard Depardieu. Did we mention Gerard Depardieu? No, because he's not a huge, significant thing in this movie, but he still has a pretty interesting scene. Also, there's that scene in the beginning of the film where there's also a riot happening.
Yeah.
Which is just, also, you think too, like, it's, for me, I'm thinking about it, I'm like, oh yeah, there was a riot at one point. Which I think was smart to add in. It gives more context to prison life for, the French at the time and stuff like that, and what was done and how gruesome it seemed to get and everything. So I do want to go back, and those kind of scenes that maybe deviated away from Delon's character, but were supposed to add something more to the film and the overall meaning and moral of the story. I want to visit back those. So would I watch it again? 100%. And I probably will soon. Overall, my rating, 9.2 does feel good. I have to agree with you there.
It's like a sweet spot.
It feels good. I do think, I think you're right. I think maybe some of the dialogue is rough. I always like to leave a little bit of a grain of salt just in case the translation is the issue and not actually the written dialogue. But there were some interesting transitions where literally it was a little goofy for the 70s, it'd be like, it felt very, I don't know, like, I guess it was, it's clearly an older film and everything like that, there could be some other differences and stuff like that. I kind of wanted a little bit more from certain characters. I wanted more of Gabine's daughter and a little bit more from Delane's second girlfriend that we see in this film. I just wanted a little bit more diversity to them. And I would love to have known a little bit more on how they specifically felt about it all, especially the girlfriend and the fact that her judgment and everything was considered to be impartial. I think I would have loved to see a scene with her getting emotional specifically about that and talking about that. But that's also, if you hear me, that's kind of me nitpicking. It's overall just a really fantastic film, and I'm happy that it was on our list and it got moved up closer, and I'm happy we were able to watch it because it's definitely one of my new favorite French films. I mean, look, is it Last Tango in Paris? I don't think so. Is it The Woman Next Door?
Oh my God.
I don't think so. But is it close on that scale to how good of a movie I think it is? Yeah, it's up there for sure.
All right.
All right. Well, that was our review of Two Men in Town. Thank you
Yay.
for sticking with this review, and I hope that this audio saves.
I hope so too.
If it doesn't, the world will hear, the earth will tremble with my screams and be heard all around the world. So by the way, Savanna, next time we talk, we haven't even, I'm not going to say a cooler movie, okay? But we do have a movie that I think you're really going to like that's coming up next.
What's the next one?
The next movie is we're going back to Italia, and we are talking about Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow.
The time has come.
And you know what? I'm in such a mood. After watching this movie, crying on my stationary bike, I am in the mood to see a tiny Italian man known as Marcello Mastroianni bark at Sevilla Loren during a striptease.
What could be better?
What was that?
What could be better?
What could be
better?
What
else would you need?
So I'm really excited to talk about that movie, and it's been a long time since I've seen it, so I'm happy to revisit it and everything. I'm also doing Duolingo Italian lessons, so I want to see what I need to improve on. I'm not going to say how good I am because I'm not far into my lessons, but what I need to improve on. For example, my boyfriend was poking me earlier today, and I yelled at him, "Non è pane," which means it is not bread. So, yeah. So anyway, so we have yesterday, today, and tomorrow coming up. Yay. And then, as always, shout out to our Patreon subscribers. We have Sensei David, we have Homeboy Chains, and we have Danny Boy. Thank you guys so much for your support. And if you would like a super cool and unique little nickname shouted out at every episode, please be sure to check out our Patreon. We do have a little bit of bonus content on our page. What's the singular form of content? We have one content. Over the summer, we made a short film. It is being put through some film festivals. Fingers crossed we get into some. And we'll know that soon. But until the meantime, the video cannot be public. So we made a private link that is only accessible through Patreon. Any tier of our Patreon listing is capable of watching the video and having access to it. So if you are interested in that, or you want the shout out, or both, please be sure to check out our Patreon. All the little monies and stuff will go to just further upgrading our equipment. Sorry, I almost burped. As needed. And, the occasional donkey run before we do a podcast recording. And we're also going to be expanding and trying out new stuff soon with more video content related. And yeah, I'm really excited to, I feel like we're back, and I'm so happy we're back.
Yay.
I'm happy we're able to talk about this movie. So thank you guys so much for listening. Before we sign off, Savanna, is there anything else you'd like to add on?
No, you just guys gotta be there next week for this movie. It's very important to me. Very important.
Yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And we will see you next time. Bye.